Hi, welcome to this HQN Business Transformation webinar. I'm Sam Young. I'm an associate with HQN, and today I'm going to be introducing you to the new Keys to Success Business Transformation model. So let's get started. We're going to be talking about what is transformation, a little bit about technology, and of course about the Keys to Success model. But firstly, let's talk about why we're here. So I've been working with HQN to develop a new model to support organisations on their business transformation journeys. Through my experiences and talking to colleagues across a number of disciplines, I really felt there was a gap in bringing together technology, culture, skills, change management, people management, essentially all the things that a business transformation programme needs, and bringing it together in a way that was practical for people to use and accessible and in one place and all those kinds of things. It also needed to be adaptable and useful to organisations in different places in their transformation journeys and with different internal skill sets. Some people have got their own internal transformation directors, and that's great, but they inevitably need something different from those often smaller organisations for whom this is just part of somebody else's day job. So using our learning from across housing, across the public sector and beyond, we've taken a best of the best approach to try and develop a robust yet flexible assessment and support toolkit. It's going to cover things like self-assessment, which we'll talk about today. We can come in and do health checks. It's got consultant support, these webinars, workshops. We're trying to develop a whole range of things which are right for people in different places in their transformation journeys. So just a very quick bit about me. I'm a real person. My picture's up there. I've got lots of experience working with large organisations, supporting their technology-enabled transformation journeys. You can see a few of them up on the screen. I tend to summarise my career as technology change and leadership. Essentially, I've got a technical IT background. I've done some very technical roles, but I've also led large-scale changes and led large IT teams and wider directorates, including call centres and all sorts of quirky stuff. I'm an coach and skills consultant. So it's a bit of a different mix, but I like to think it works and it helps me really get to grips with big changes, particularly technology-enabled changes. I'm currently on the board of Great Places and I run my own digital and management consultant as well as being a lead associate for HQM. So if this is a live webinar, this is the point where I'd kind of get you to introduce yourselves. But it's worth you taking a few seconds just before we move on to note down what you want to get from listening today. I'd actually love to hear that, so if you fancy sending me at some point, that'd be great. It'd also be really good if you share that at some point with other people, because I think part of the advantage of the business transformation groups that HQM runs is that sharing and learning from each other. So what is it you want to get out of business transformation workshops? What do you want to get out of the Keys to Success? Okay, so let's get started properly. What is transformation? Well, for most organisations, there is a trigger that sets them off on a transformational path, or at very least brings an urgency to changes that need making. Making the best use of technology and innovation in all enable significant savings to be made, and importantly, significant improvements to customer service at the same time. It's really no longer acceptable to have large-scale IT and IT change programs spanning years and years, lots of discussion about requirements. They become irrelevant before they've even started, and they're often seen as a real failure. Change needs to be implemented quickly and visibly, and the speed of implementation, information gathering, decision-making and change comes with risks that can feel daunting. But what really is business transformation? Well, for me, there are broadly three types of change. Small, continual service improvements, the kind of things that people get on with and do, sometimes invisibly within organisations every day. There are service-led changes, so we want to change repairs, or we want to change applications process, or we want to change who we house. Still quite narrow in their definition. They're a single entity and we're going to change those. And then there are other things which are organisational wide. There can be about culture. There can be about those bigger issues. Who are we actually here for? Who are we serving? What does our vision look like in 10 years' time? All these things are quite disruptive and all work together. And sometimes they don't work together, and that's where you get some of these issues. You might have organisation-wide vision, which is going one direction, a service-led change going another, and somebody actually doing some small changes without even thinking about what the bigger picture is. It can feel quite disruptive, and it can't easily be shoehorned into a project plan, not a single one anyway. So that's not to say that your parts can't have or shouldn't have some structure. But it can feel quite big and quite scary. But really, it does boil down to three things: doing new things, finding ways to do existing things differently, and stopping doing some things. And I think when you start to just think about it like that, it becomes a bit more palatable and something that's a bit more achievable. So transformation is ultimately change, and it's change at an organisational level, and it's changing everything. But it doesn't have to be big and scary. What is digital transformation? Well, that's everything I just said, but using technology as fully as possible to help you along the way. It's nothing more than that. Technology brings lots of opportunity, but really technology is there to enable cultural and organisational transformation. There are barriers to success. Transformation needs a real mix of people, process and technology. Each individually can be a barrier to success, and together they can be a huge barrier to success. People on the whole don't like change that much. Some people say on it, but generally people don't like it that much. There can be a real fear of failure within organisations, not wanting to change something in case it just doesn't work. Doing things how they've always been done is safe, it's repeatable, and it possibly doesn't even feel like it needs to be changed because it doesn't feel like it's broken. And technology, well, it never quite does what you expect it to do, does it? We all know that. We've all been party sat in somewhere, or you click something and it doesn't do what you expect. But all of this boils down to culture. Simply put, the ideas, the customs and the behaviours of people, when they get together, they will make or break a successful transformation. If they gel together positively, they will change, they'll adapt, they'll make things happen. Or if they form this change, then that will be it. It will be a real stopper to getting anything done and to making change happen. Digital transformation, however you dress it up, is cultural transformation, and you can't separate the two. You need to get the culture right, and then you need to work on the people, the process and the technology, and then you've got a transformation programme. But let's have a look at technology next. So the list on the left. Whenever you actually look at current technology trends, you'll get something along these lines: artificial intelligence, apps, wearable technology, Internet of Things, Amazon Alexa, virtual reality. Your varying lists, you can go in different places on the internet, you'll come up with one, and they all come down to roughly these sorts of things. Actually, the last couple of years hasn't changed that much in terms of these big headline technologies that are coming along. But there are undoubtedly going to be some game changes in there and some real technological advances coming. And a lot of organisations are experimenting with them. I read today about PepsiCo using artificial intelligence and speech recognition to interview candidates for jobs. I think it's in Russia, actually, they're doing that. And one of the things they're doing is actually screening people. So a computer rings somebody up and it asks them some simple questions. Do you have the right driving license? Do you have, the right credentials? People answer yes or no to simple voice commands, and it screens them for jobs. And actually, it's doing a good job. We could apply that same technology to, say, welfare and benefit advice. Alexa's in now supporting older and more vulnerable people. It's working in different ways. It's understanding what people normally do when people walk in rooms. It's here, it's happening. However, for the majority of organisations, certainly the ones I speak to, and especially in the not-for-profit and housing sectors, the conversations are much like my alternative list on the right-hand side. Artificial intelligence, well, actually, a lot of people are still struggling to get a good contact management or customer relationship management system in place. Decent housing management systems, well, we've got them and they're catching up slowly, but they're kind of behind the ambition of most organisations at the moment. Wearable technology, well, again, I think a lot of people are still in that, can we have an offline mode for something that works properly so that when I'm out and about and I've got my tablet, I've got the information I need. Well, I think a lot of us are still grappling with any data, actually, and intelligent data and accurate data, and then what do you do with all this data? Internet of Things, yeah, absolutely, but web chat, many people still in this kind of space looking at web chat. Can we use it well on the internet? How can we use chatbots better to support our contact centres? Rise of the robots. Well, actually, if you go into many IT teams and organisations, it's just a reliable infrastructure that's up to date, modern, and can deal with some of the things that we want to do with a headache. A transactional website properly connects to our systems, and virtual reality, well, even something like a webinar, video conferencing, we're not really there yet. We're getting there, but we're not quite at virtual reality stages. So I think there's a real practicality about where people are and where organisations and housing is at the moment. And we need to kind of acknowledge that, because we need to deal with that before we can start to do the really sexy stuff. IT teams I speak to generally pretty frustrated with their execs for going off to conferences and wanting the next shiny thing when they're actually struggling to keep the lights on and battling with systems that are outdated. I think equally execs are frustrated with IT teams because they're battling with systems that are outdated and they don't understand why the IT can't be these innovative things that they see when they go to conferences. So it ends up with a bit of a perfect storm, really. Technology teams and contracts that have become remote from the aspirations of an organisation and just don't feel fit for purpose. Innovation versus stability and reliability. New versus steady state and what we know works. And ultimately, it's really challenging the risk appetite of organisations. And I think that's something we have to bear in mind when we're doing transformation, because transformation is whatever transformation is to us in our organisation, in our position. It's not what somebody else is going through or what someone else wants us to be. Having said all that, I'm going to go slightly off topic of the keys to success, and I'm going to give you my 10 tips for technology. And this is just some ideas, really, for kind of managing that technology piece. So for me, you've got to expect a lot from your technology teams. Don't let them get away with just doing IT or infrastructure or being in the back office. IT is actually a frontline service. If you want to talk frontline back office, you won't get people interacting with your website who are not using technology. Technology is frontline for them. If someone's talking to your contact centre, that person is using technology. If the technology is not working, the frontline service isn't working. So expect a lot from your technology teams and don't let them be back office services. Equally, don't have conversations without involving them, because they can't help you and they can't be part of the change and they can't understand what the business wants if they're never involved in the conversation and the thinking that comes out with the answers. So get people involved. Don't think about what you need, think about how you would like things to be. I quite often talk about a day in the life, and we'll talk about it in the keys to success in a minute, actually. And that's really powerful for me. So write down how you would like your day to be. Don't write down, I want to use this system and that system. That comes second. Match your ambitions with the reality of where you are. And I'll talk about this again a little bit later as well. You can't do the shiny stuff without having some good foundations. You can't build the house without having the foundations in place. Think big, start small, deliver fast. Brilliant, have the aspirations, but actually start small, start with deliverable things and get on with it and deliver it. And the more you deliver, the more people will be bought into the technology, the changes that are happening, and you'll buy yourself time for some of the bigger changes. Use the vendors to challenge your thinking. They're out there, they're talking to people, they're working with people in different industries. Use those different industry experiences to challenge your thinking and where you want to go. Shop around for ideas. I quite often talk about the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce the number of systems you've got, reuse the systems you've got where you can in a fit for purpose, and recycle other people's ideas. You don't have to do everything differently and start again. Look beyond convention and look beyond publicity. So you'll find a lot of people talking about what they do. They'll be giving you statistics about how fantastic they are. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes if you delve underneath a little bit more, it isn't. I think digital transactions is a great one for that. And are they really digital end to end? So when you book an appointment, is it really going straight to someone's PDA, or is actually it just sending an email to somebody? Both are fine, but one gets a lot of publicity and maybe that's not deserved, and other people try and follow it and wonder why they can't get there. Experiment, don't pilot. I talk about this a lot in everything I do. Experimentation for me means you try something, you take the learning from it, you make some tweaks, you try it again, and you're building all the time to get to the place you want to go. Pilots seem to suggest You design something, you build it, you test it, you pilot it, it doesn't work. You have to go all the way back to the beginning, and it can be seen as a failure. So I think pilots can kind of push this failure language, and really we want to take a language which is about experimenting, and it won't be perfect, but every step you take will get you somewhere new. And don't ignore it. Get the basics good enough. Security, capacity, availability, disaster recovery. It's not the shiny stuff, but it will trip you up if it's not right. Listen to the IT teams, they've got the knowledge. Listen to your suppliers, they've got the knowledge, and get the basics good enough. They don't have to be brilliant, they don't have to be the best, but they need to be good enough. Right, so that's my little conversation about technology. So we'll move on to the key to success. Back on track. So we've identified as part of our key to success 3 critical aspects to any large-scale transformation or change program. Creating the right environment, which is culture. Having the winning strategy, knowing what we're doing, and being tenacious about the execution, getting on with it. That's essentially it. 3 big pieces, 3 big concepts, but I felt that they were too abstract, too big to go into just on their own. So we've actually broken those down into 10 kind of practical areas you can work with and you can think. And we're going to cover those now in a little bit more detail. So they are vision, leadership, structure, technology, outcomes, principles, data and insight, resources, stakeholders, and governance. Before I talk about them in much more detail, I'm just going to introduce this to you. One of the things that we've done is create a self-assessment, and it goes through those 10 areas, and it's just a series of questions that takes you through for you to rate yourself against them. So you can see up on the screen now the kind of structure that looks like. Okay, so it's not designed to be completely comprehensive. It's not a list of everything that you'll ever have to think about, but it is designed to get started, get you thinking, give you some areas to challenge yourself on. You can use the scoring mechanism to look at your relative strengths and areas for improvements. And in each section, we've given you some notes and guidance about what best practice might look like. So when you finish this webinar, go and download yourself a copy of this and work through it. The rest of the webinar, as we're talking about things, will help as well, help you think about it. And if you've got any questions, then do just shout up at the end, come back to HQN, and we will come back to you on them. So that's the self-assessment. It's one key part of what we're doing, and I think it'll really help. So do please go and have a look at that. Okay, so back to the keys to success. Create the right environment. So business transformation requires an environment that fosters a collaborative and innovative approach. It needs to help break down organisational barriers, allow experimentation, and empower people to challenge the status quo. We've picked out 4 areas supporting this, creating the right environment: vision, leadership, structure, and technology. So vision, this is about creating a understood vision for your organisation. And I'm not talking about what we're going to do this year. I'm talking about what the 10-year view looks like, that big picture stuff of where we're really headed in the future. And okay, it might not be perfect, it might not be right, we might never get there, but creating that really high-level vision and having it very clear and understood, I think, is really paramount to what you're trying to achieve with the transformation programme. It just sets it in context. I would also talk about having a transformation strategy, so a strategy about how you're going to get there, so where you want to get to, and then a transformation strategy which talks about how you're going to get there. People need to believe in that vision, though, and that requires a really compelling voice. You need to be able to get through those cultural barriers to change. So for me, you need to pay real attention to authentic and visible leadership for the programme. There is no technology change, there is no transformation programme that isn't fundamentally about people. And sometimes that people element can get a bit overlooked because it becomes about IT. So let's keep it back in that leadership piece. Let's keep it about people. And how those people work together and are structured to pull in the same direction is really important. Either actual line management structures or virtual teams, or how you want to put a programme together. how you do that will help to take the pinch points and friction out of your program and friction out of your changes. If you don't have people all pulling in the same direction, you will have issues, and there's no way around that. So you need to have some honest conversation with yourself about what that structure looks like. I'd also kind of just add into that, I think it quite often helps if that structure is embedded into how the organisation operates rather than being something very separate. And that's something, again, and it really depends on the organisation. But quite often if you set it up as a completely separate programme, it becomes something in its own right rather than how the organisation is going to embrace change and do things differently. And this one could be a bit controversial, but I really strongly believe that in organisations that excel in business transformation, technology is positioned at the centre as an enabler of change. It works hand in hand with the rest of the business on the art of the possible, and it also has a really clear voice at the top table. It is promoted as central to the activities of the organisation, so it's not tucked away as a back office support function. That for me is a fundamental shift in thinking and organisational thinking, and it's about every leader in your organisation being a digital leader. And I think that is a really key part of making transformation a success and digital transformation a success. IT has to be front and centre of it, and it can't get away with not being. So think about how you can position that and make that work for your organisation. So those are some key elements about creating the right environment, getting that culture sorted. Once you feel that you've got the right kind of culture, then you can start to think about what's that winning strategy? What's the strategy going to be that's really going to get us where we want to be? So business transformation requires that clear purpose and vision. It needs to be informed by data, enabled by technology, and be expressed in a way that people understand and can imagine with clear goals. And I use that word imagine because I think imagination is a key part of this, and storytelling is a key part of this actually, and I would put that under the strategy piece. So specific keys to creating the winning strategy would include outcomes, principles, data and insight. So let's talk about outcomes. What does it look like in year 1, year 3, year 5 and year 10? You've got that year 10 vision, but what's year 1 look like? What's year 3 look like? What are you going to have actually achieved? If you can get good clarity on what you want to achieve and the objectives are well communicated and cross-cutting, then you're well on your way to kind of achieving success with the transformation program. And that's where I come back to stories, and I'll talk about that a few times really in this section. Can you describe it in a way that people really relate to and understand? So it's not a dry thing, but it really helps them understand what it's going to mean for them, the what's in it for me. Principles and target operating model. Well, this for me is ultra important. And I think this is missing from a lot of transformation programs, but really key. And that's ensuring that there's a framework in place that really describes the boundaries of what needs to change so that you can empower your teams to deliver and make the right decisions. What are the key concepts about how the organisation will operate if the changes are successful? And how do people know that what they're changing and doing is within those operating principles? So again, what is the day in the life of them? What are the user stories? And if I'm creating a change, then do I know that it's actually going to take us towards that user story that I've been told and that I understand, or is it going to take me away from it? Am I going to put everything online? And actually, the principles of my organisation is that I'm not going to put everything online. I only want to put certain things, really transactional things online. So actually, trying to get everything on, it just isn't where we want to be. So understanding what those boundaries are, what the principles are, I think is really empowering for people delivering transformational change. And making sure the approach is well informed by data and insight. So are you aware of the performance data your organisation holds, and how can you use that to inform the business transformation changes you want to make? How can you consider it more fully? And remember that today's ways of measuring things may not be tomorrow's, so don't always think about change and transformational change in terms of improving a particular metric, because it might be that the metric fundamentally needs to change. And think about those customer stories as well as the hard data. I always think this is an area that strategies can feel quite dry, but this for me is about feeling. How does it feel to work in your organisation? How can we describe how that feels better? So we've got a culture. We've got how we're going to do it. We've got our boundaries. We understand what transformation we need to make is. We come on to the tenacious execution. And I've called it tenacious because I really do think it requires tenacity and real courage of conviction at times. You will be doing things as part of a transformation program that feel uncomfortable to people, and you'll get a lot of challenge on those. So really being able to dig deep and say, yep, I believe in this, and I've got that courage to make it happen is a really important element for me. So you need to have clear leadership, you need a structured approach and the right resources to deliver. So the things we've put under this tenacious execution section are around resource, stakeholders and governance. So review your program. Have you got the right capacity identified? It's going to be hard to make changes at any pace without it. And it's also really beneficial to be clear up front about what your clear budget is and what your investor save or other processes are going to be for your program. The benefits are really twofold. It gives you certainty on what can be delivered, and it enables to clearly ensure the capacity and funding match the ambition and the pace of change required, or set the expectations accordingly. There is no point trying to create change in 12 months unless you are willing to resource it and fund it to happen in 12 months. You have to change the expectations, so it's going to take 2 years if that is what it's going to take. Or you have to be upfront and say it's going to cost more money if you want to do it in a shorter time frame and have an honest conversation about that. Completing a stakeholder map and an engagement plan is really important. That will really help you deliver on the programme. It's going to be a big change for people, so it needs some careful thought and planning. And that ability to consider how everyone will be impacted and work through the barriers and benefits for that individual is a really important strength and something that will help you manage and target communication to bring those people with you. And knotty issues, fast decision making and taking away some of the discussion. I've worked in organisations where there is an inertia because you have so much discussion about things, you never get on and actually do it. So getting some governance in place which allows some real fast decision making to happen based on those principles and that strategy we've set and that vision we've got and the culture delivered is really important. Often a transformation is seen to have failed because the savings are just not clearly identified and don't materialise within budgets. I think quite often this is a failure in understanding how that saving might be made up. So we might identify £1,000 worth of saving, for instance, but actually it's just 50p's. It's lots of 50p around an organisation. They're quite difficult to gather together and realise. So having that conversation with your finance teams and understanding how you're going to do it, I think can help up front, because it stops that piece where actually you've implemented the technology changes, you've got the culture, you've made all the things happen, but you've not realised the savings, so people still don't see it as a success. So think about how you're going to actually express that saving and get other people involved, including the finance team, in making that happen. Okay, so that was quite a quick view about what's included in the keys to success. Hopefully that's been helpful. There is more detail in the self-assessment. So when you read through that, you'll hear the things I've said, but a little bit more as well. Or you can book on to one of the workshops if you want to go through it further. Or indeed have talked to us about some consultancy, which enables us to delve much deeper into this model. But you should have enough in the toolkit and this webinar to really get you started. I'd like to just leave you with 2 more thoughts, though, before we finish. Firstly, I'm sure many of you will have come across the Kubler-Ross change curve, which suggests that people go through a particular set of emotions when they go through change. And I'd just kind of like you to forgive yourselves a little bit at this point, because no matter how good you are, people will go through this change curve. No matter how brilliant your transformation program is, people will go through this change curve. Your job is to lessen the lower points and help people through it. But don't think you can eliminate it. You can't. You just have to acknowledge it and work with people on it. This is a people program, so you have to work and manage people. And you have to work and manage the technology. And no matter how innovative you want to be with your technology, you have to get those foundations in place. You have to work with your technology teams, and you have to find the balance between your ambitions and your ability. Again, a technology program is only as good as the technology you can afford and you have. and it's only as good as the implementation and the people and the training and the culture and everything else that works with it. So think about that and get your foundations in place, and don't be caught out by something like GDPR or security or something like that. Think about those things, build them in, build in inclusive design, and don't fail with your technology. So we've looked at transformation quickly. We've talked about technology. We've talked about the keys to success model. I really believe this key to success model can help. It's not designed to be prescriptive. You still need to kind of work through that for yourselves and apply it to your organisation, to your current culture, to where you are, to the outcomes that you're looking for. But I really believe that if you use it, you can get the best outcomes possible for your organisation, colleagues, customers, and yourselves. You have access to this toolkit. You've access to lots of resources to support you on your journey, whether you're just starting out or you in fact don't know where to start, or well on your way and you want some reassurance. I think you'll find the contents of the keys to success a real help. So thank you. Thank you for listening and getting to the end with me. I asked you near the beginning to note down what you wanted to get from this webinar and if we've achieved it. So have we achieved it? Have we answered your questions? If we didn't, please do get in touch. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm sure HQM will put us in touch. If you noted down questions and things have popped into your mind during this webinar, then send them across to HQN and we'll get them answered for you. We might even do a follow-up to this with an FAQ webinar, so watch this space. Thank you for listening. Good luck with your plans and bye for now.